Ted Nolan, an author now, Life in Two Worlds. We all know listen, Ted, I only know the hockey Ted Nolan. And I should first say that Matthew Barnaby's a very good friend of mine. He loves you. So if you're a friend of his, I got to say you're a friend of mine. And I've been wanting to chat with you for years. Well, thank you for the time, Ted. And I just want to say, what is up with you? What's going on in the life of Ted Nolan, the book and everything else?
Well, first of all, Rod, thanks for having me on. Things have been really good for the last number of years. I hooked up with my son Jordan. Just left the room here a while ago. He was lucky enough to win a couple of cups with LA, and Brandon, my oldest boy, he played with Carolina for a little bit. So together we created a three Nolans hockey program. And what we go into, a lot of remote First Nation communities here in Canada, kind of like your Native Americans in the States. But we go into a lot of underprivileged communities and do some schools with them and other places also. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What's the number one sport in those First Nation communities? Because I know there's a lot of lacrosse players coming out of there. Is hockey rival lacrosse or is hockey number one?
Well, in Southern Ontario, lacrosse, I think it's a little bit ahead of hockey, but not too much. But hockey's it's prevalent sport in here. One of my childhood best places to play. We created this little NHL league. It was called the Little Native Hockey League, and it was created in early 70s. And I was on one of the first teams to ever participate. And the reason for it, because a lot of our players like myself went into cities to try to play on teams, but for whatever reason, we weren't able to play and get that experience of traveling with the team, staying in a hotel. So what our elders did at the time is they created this little NHL tournament. And so that was brings back a lot of, but hockey's a huge sport in our First Nation communities.
What are you teaching most? Hockey skills, life skills, or a combo of both?
Well, the hockey is the trick to get them there because they all love hockey. But once we get them there, we really talk about the importance of education, the importance of believing in yourself and achieving goals. It doesn't matter where you're from and how much money you have. It's that will and desire inside that's going to dictate who you, and just a strong belief in who you are. And I'm not too sure if you heard too much about the residential school situation that happened here in Canada, but it's really big. So a lot of trauma from the past. It's kind of generational trauma that's been passed down. So to go in and have a little shed of light to bring in a little bit of hope. So when they see a person like me who's lived the exact same environment that they did, maybe it'll be an inspiration. Then all of a sudden you see my two sons and others doing some magical things. So it's just a way to give back and to inspire.
I'll tell our producers in Atlanta and Toronto, boys, this interview might go a little long. I won't keep it too long, Ted, but I got so much to say. I'm a licensed mental health and addiction recovery coach, so I know that DNA holds trauma in it. And the First Nations community is number one in that. So trust me, I know that. So I guess my next thing for you is I think of you as an overcomer, longtime junior hockey guy here, and I worked in the CFL too, but I look at your resume, Memorial Cup winning coach and coach in the National Hockey League, played in the National Hockey League. You are an overcomer. When did you realize that you were overcoming all these things? Because I'm guessing in life you were just doing it. You didn't realize you were knocking these barriers over, or maybe you did.
Rod, I'm glad you brought up mental health because a lot of the situation I was born into a large family, a family of 6 sisters and 5 brothers, and times were kind of lean at the time. But the one thing that I really enjoyed doing to get away from all the chaos once in a while was to play hockey. I made my own rink in my backyard. Learned how to skate on skates that were size 8. My feet were size probably 3 or whatever. But anyway, I just fell in love with the sport, and it just kind of took me away from everything. And the more and more I played it, the better I got, and had better opportunities. I went out, tried out with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds when I was 16 years old, and next year, playing alongside with Wayne Gretzky on that same team. So the more you see, the more opportunities it just created. And then But coaching is one of those things that I never really planned on doing. It just kind of fell in my lap. I was so tired of the sport when I did retire when I was 26 years of age because of a back injury. I was just so tired of fighting all the time, trying to overcoming some of the name calling, and especially with how the situation ended up in Buffalo. It was just god awful. So to get involved with coaching after my playing career was a blessing.
Yeah, well, you're skimming the top of it. And I want to say this. I worked in the Western Hockey League for 20 years. I have never found a guy that would say a bad word about Ted Nolan. Like that Buffalo thing, I don't know what happened. Barney doesn't even really seem to know what happened. Barney, people love you, Ted. I don't know what happened. But have you realized at some point everything happens for a reason? Have you reconciled that or not?
No question. Like I said, I think we all go through certain things too, and even this book. I never chose to write a book. I wanted to bury what happened in the past, and not having answers to what happened myself. So, but I did an interview a couple years ago, and I did it on Truth and Reconciliation. And halfway through the interview, I just got so emotional. Like the emotion just kind of poured out of me, and it kind of flashed back when I was a kid going through what I went through, and then junior hockey going through, and minor pro, and then all of a sudden in Buffalo, and all those things just kind of flooded out. And then someone from Penguin Books saw the interview, thought it would be an interesting story to tell. And I was sure glad they reached out, because it's more than just a poor boy makes good story. It's about acceptance, about understanding of different races and who we are and where we come from. Because everybody just assumes that they know about people, but they really don't.
Was it cathartic for you, therapeutic in a way to do this?
It was very, very therapeutic, because we start off the book by me kicking the Jack Adams trophy downstairs, and you hear the metallic sound. But at the time I was in a very dark place. I was frustrated. I was angry. I didn't know how to release some of the anger, because I never talked to a mental health specialist before. Then going through the reasons they let me go in Buffalo, and people started believing all this stuff. I was drunk at practice. I got the general manager fired. I was only 30-something years old. How am I going to do it? I'm a second-year coach. Those type of things just it really. And I turned down a 3-year contract, and so I just held all this stuff in, and I knowing it's all untrue. So once they wrote me, so it was a great therapeutic thing to release and say, no, I didn't turn down a 3-year contract. No, I didn't get the general manager fired. No, I didn't show up to practice drunk. So it was just very therapeutic. And that one probably hurt the most, Rod, is the drunk at practice, because it's kind of derogatory against our people that were drinkers. And my mother was tragically killed by a drunk driver when I was only 21 years of age. So I spoke out against drinking and drunk driving and all that stuff. So to hear that comment, that's one that probably hurt the most.
I don't know why people say these things, and we have no control over them, obviously, but they do so much damage. And you asked if I knew about the residential school thing. I knew about the Cowessus, which is 40 miles outside of Regina, but when the Kamloops came up, I was golfing the next day with Chief Edmund Bellegarde, and he was on the tee, and I turned and I said, Edmund, did you know? And he looked at me, he goes, I knew. They knew. You know what I mean? Did you know?
We knew.
This stuff?
We knew about it. So, that's why, even to this day, I'm very sad. I don't speak our language fluently. I know enough to get by, but our parents didn't want to teach us the language, because they didn't want what happened to the kids who spoke the language, what happened to them. We've heard so many horrific stories what happened at the residential schools. So they really took a back seat on really trying to protect us. And so that still hurts. But, just some of the stories that we heard over and over again our whole lives. And then finally, when the truth started coming out, now the rest of the world is really starting to realize what happened at these institutions. You can't even call them schools. But whatever happened to them, I went to a day school, and the day schools was probably just as bad, but we got to come home at nighttime.
Well, I've done extensive work with the First Nations community in mental health and addiction recovery. So, yeah, you get my number, please, Ted, from your PR person or our producer. And if you need anything, you let me know. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. I mean it, man. I can't find anybody that would say a bad word about you, Ted. So I hope things are good, and I really appreciate the time today.
Oh, Rod, right now is probably the best I've ever felt my entire life, as far as mentally, and just getting over it and speaking to some people from the mental health. It's a real tough situation to go through. But the bottom line, when I put that pair of skates on, the only thing I want to do is just play. And when I started coaching, the only thing I wanted to do was coach. And if they said I wasn't a very good player, that's fine. If they said I wasn't a very good coach, that's fine. But when you start making up situations to get rid of somebody, that's wrong.
Yeah. Well, you look great, but you always look great, Ted. You know that. Thanks again, and keep in touch.
Thanks, Rod.
Championship player and coach, Ted Nolan, and now author, and I'm sure pretty soon to be best-selling author.